Keep the camera on. Special Agent Darius Mitchell stood beside his unmarked sedan in a public parking lot, his hands clearly visible while Officer Scott Brennan held an open federal credential wallet beneath the cold afternoon light. Darius wore a charcoal suit beneath a dark overcoat, and a sealed case folder rested on the hood of his car. Several office workers had slowed nearby. A woman loading groceries into her vehicle had stopped to watch. Brennan glanced at the body camera centered on his uniform. "You should worry about yourself, not my camera." Darius looked directly at the small red light. "Right now, your camera may be the fairest witness here." Officer Ethan Miller stood several feet away beside the patrol vehicle. His attention remained fixed on the credential. "Scott, I can verify this." Brennan did not look at him. "Not yet." Darius's expression stayed composed. "What are you waiting for?" "I am determining what you were doing around these vehicles." "I already told you." Darius nodded toward the silver sedan beside him. "That one is mine." Brennan looked at the car. "We will determine that." A few people turned toward them. The words carried farther across the open parking lot than they needed to. Darius heard the change in the silence around him. He did not look at the strangers watching. "You can determine more than that in less than a minute." Brennan's jaw tightened. "Stop telling me how to conduct this contact. Then tell me what information you need." Brennan held up the credential wallet. "I am still deciding whether this is legitimate." "Call the Federal Bureau of Investigation Field Office." Miller nodded. "That is what I was suggesting." Brennan ignored him. Darius continued. "Verify the credential information. Check the vehicle registration. Or speak with David Morgan inside the office complex. I left a scheduled meeting with him minutes ago." Across the parking aisle, Linda Parker raised her smartphone and began recording. Darius noticed without reacting. His own phone vibrated inside his coat. Karen Wallace. FBI Supervisory Special Agent. Brennan heard it. "Do not reach for the phone." Darius kept both hands visible. "I was not going to." The vibration stopped. Seconds later, it began again. Miller glanced toward Darius's coat. "Scott, his supervisor may be calling because he is overdue." Brennan gave a short breath. "Or somebody labeled a contact to make a story look convincing." Darius nodded. "Then do not trust the label. Call the field office independently." A gust of cold wind moved through the parking lot, pushing dry leaves between the painted spaces. The number 214 was visible beneath the rear bumper of Darius's sedan. Brennan looked at the license plate, then back at Darius. "Why were you checking other cars?" "I was confirming vehicle information from my case notes before leaving." "That sounds convenient." Darius looked at the credential still in Brennan's hand. "Everything I have told you can be checked." Miller stepped toward the patrol vehicle. "I am making the call." Brennan turned sharply. "Ethan, wait." Miller stopped, but his expression had changed. Darius looked at Brennan. "Officer, am I being detained?" Brennan paused. "Until I establish who you are and what you were doing here." Darius nodded toward his credential wallet. "You are holding the way to establish who I am." Brennan gestured toward the sedan. "Stand away from the vehicle and keep your hands where I can see them." Darius complied immediately. More faces turned toward him. The public attention was beginning to feel heavier than the questions. Still, his voice never rose. "Keep your body camera running." Brennan stared at him. Darius looked once more at the red light. "If your decisions are reasonable, the recording will protect you too." Miller finally reached for the official verification number. Darius's phone began vibrating for the third time. Karen Wallace. FBI Supervisory Special Agent. 8 minutes earlier, Darius Mitchell had walked toward parking space 214, believing the hardest part of his afternoon was already behind him. 8 minutes earlier, Special Agent Darius Mitchell stepped through the glass doors of Westbridge Office Center with a sealed case folder tucked beneath his arm. At 43, he had spent enough years with the Federal Bureau of Investigation to know that fraud cases were usually built in quiet rooms, not dramatic confrontations. That afternoon had been no different. David Morgan, the complex manager, had spent nearly an hour providing access records and parking information connected to an ongoing federal inquiry. Before leaving, Darius checked that the requested documents were secured inside his folder. His phone vibrated as he crossed the lobby. Karen Wallace, his supervisory special agent, had sent a message. "Call me when you have the records." Darius replied, "Leaving now." Outside, the temperature had dropped, and a dry wind moved across the public parking lot. Employees walked toward their cars carrying laptop bags and coffee cups. Darius buttoned his dark overcoat and headed toward space 214, where his silver unmarked sedan waited beneath a row of bare trees. He stopped beside the car and opened his case notes. One page contained vehicle information gathered during the meeting. Darius looked toward two parked sedans across the aisle, compared their license plates with the numbers in his notes, then closed the folder. It took less than a minute. He did not know someone farther across the lot had already called police about a suspicious man checking vehicles. The description sent to officers Scott Brennan and Ethan Miller was broad, black male, dark coat, carrying a folder, looking at parked cars. Miller read the dispatch screen from the passenger seat. Not much of a description. Brennan looked through the windshield as their patrol vehicle entered the lot. There. Darius was standing beside his own sedan, checking his phone before unlocking the door. Brennan parked several spaces away. Darius heard the doors close and looked up. "Sir, step away from the vehicle." Darius immediately moved one step away. "Is there a problem, officer?" Brennan approached while Miller remained slightly behind. "What are you doing around these cars?" "I just left a meeting inside." "That was not my question." Darius kept his tone neutral. "I was checking vehicle information against my case notes." Brennan looked at the sealed folder. "What case?" "A federal investigation." Brennan's expression changed, but not toward belief. "Identification." Darius nodded. "My federal credentials are inside my coat." Brennan watched his hands. Slowly. Darius followed the instruction, removed the credential wallet, opened it, and handed it over. Brennan examined the photograph and agency identification. Miller stepped closer. "Federal Bureau of Investigation?" "Yes," Darius said. "You can verify it through the field office." Miller looked at Brennan. "We should." Brennan continued studying Darius instead. "Why are you alone?" "Because I attended a scheduled interview, not an enforcement operation." "And that car?" Brennan pointed toward the silver sedan. "Mine." "Registration?" "It can be verified." Darius nodded toward the office building. "David Morgan can also confirm I was meeting with him." Through the lobby glass, Morgan was still visible near the reception desk. Brennan looked briefly toward him, then back at Darius. "Stay here." "Of course." Darius's phone vibrated. Karen Wallace. FBI Supervisory Special Agent. He did not reach for it. Miller looked toward Brennan. "Scott, we have credentials, a verification number, and someone inside who can confirm the meeting." Brennan held the wallet a little tighter. "Not yet." Darius heard those two words and understood that something had shifted. The officer had asked for evidence. Darius had provided it. Now the evidence itself seemed to require permission to matter. Across the parking aisle, Linda Parker slowed beside her vehicle and began watching. Darius glanced down at the painted number beneath his sedan. 214, it was simply a parking space. Within minutes, it would become the place where everyone watching would learn whether verification could outrun assumption. Linda Parker remained beside her car as Officer Scott Brennan continued holding Darius Mitchell's open federal credential wallet. She had watched the exchange long enough to notice the strange imbalance in it. The black man in the charcoal suit was not refusing instructions. He was offering answers. The officer holding those answers kept postponing the simplest way to check them. Linda raised her phone and began recording. Officer Brennan, Darius said, what information are you still trying to establish? Brennan looked toward the silver sedan in space 214. Whether that vehicle actually belongs to you, for one thing. Check the registration. We will. When? Brennan's expression tightened. You are in no position to set the schedule. The words carried across the open lot. Two office workers walking toward their vehicles slowed. Darius felt their attention without looking toward them. I am not setting a schedule. I am pointing to information you can verify. Officer Ethan Miller stepped closer. Scott, I can run the plate while we call the field office. Brennan shook his head. Not yet. Darius looked at the credential wallet. You asked for identification. I gave you federal credentials. Which have not been confirmed. Because you have not confirmed them. Miller glanced at Brennan. The distinction landed harder than Darius intended. His phone vibrated again. Karen Wallace. FBI Supervisory Special Agent. Brennan noticed. Keep your hands visible. They are visible. Then leave them there. Darius complied. Through the office center windows, David Morgan had noticed the police vehicles. He stepped outside and started across the sidewalk. Officers? Brennan turned. Sir, stay back. Morgan stopped several yards away. I manage this complex. Agent Mitchell just left a scheduled meeting with me. Miller looked toward Brennan. That confirms the meeting. Brennan raised his voice enough for the nearby witnesses to hear. We are still determining who this man is and whose vehicle he is standing beside. Darius finally looked toward the people watching. A woman near a sport utility vehicle quickly looked away. Another man remained still with his briefcase in one hand. The humiliation was not in being asked a question. It was in having answers publicly treated as though they carried less weight because Brennan had already decided what kind of explanation he expected. Darius turned back. The vehicle is registered to me. The field office can verify my employment. Mr. Morgan can verify my meeting. What else do you need? Brennan pointed away from the sedan. Move farther from the vehicle. Darius complied immediately. Like this? Stay there. Fine. Miller walked toward the patrol vehicle. I am making the verification call. Brennan turned sharply. Ethan. Miller stopped. Scott, what are we waiting for? Silence. Cold wind moved dry leaves across the painted asphalt. Darius's credential wallet now rested on the patrol hood beside his sealed case folder. His phone vibrated for the third time. Karen Wallace. FBI Supervisory Special Agent. Linda's camera remained steady. Darius looked toward Brennan's body camera. Keep that recording on. Brennan gave a dismissive breath. You keep worrying about cameras. Because cameras remember what people later explain differently. Brennan stared at him. You think being calm makes you credible? Darius's expression did not change. No. Evidence makes me credible. Miller picked up the official phone. This time he did not wait for permission. I am calling. Brennan said nothing. Miller dialed the independently listed field office number and identified himself. Officer Ethan Miller. I need to verify credentials for Darius Mitchell. Darius stood quietly beside space 214 while the call connected. The parking lot seemed suddenly too open, every passing glance too visible. Miller listened. Then his posture changed. Yes, I have the credential number. He read it carefully. Several seconds passed. Brennan looked toward him. Miller listened again. Understood. He checked the call timer. 47 seconds. Then he looked directly at Brennan. Scott. Darius Mitchell is an active special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The field office confirms his official assignment at this complex. Miller glanced at the patrol computer. And the registration on the sedan matches him. Brennan became still. Across the lot, a dark federal vehicle turned into the entrance. Darius watched it approach without smiling. Nothing about his identity had changed in 47 seconds. Only the willingness to verify it had. The dark federal vehicle stopped near the entrance to the parking lot, and Supervisory Special Agent Karen Wallace stepped out before Officer Scott Brennan had found anything to say. Darius Mitchell remained beside space 214, hands visible, his federal credential wallet and sealed case folder still resting on the patrol hood. Karen crossed the asphalt with a controlled expression that made Officer Ethan Miller straighten instinctively. Agent Mitchell, she asked. I am fine. Karen looked at Miller. You verified him? Yes, ma'am. Directly through the field office. Active special agent, official assignment confirmed. Vehicle registration also matches. How long did verification take? Miller glanced at the call timer. 47 seconds. Karen's eyes moved to Brennan. When were the credentials presented? Brennan hesitated. Early in the contact. David Morgan remained several yards away near the office entrance. I also told them Agent Mitchell had just left a scheduled meeting with me. Linda Parker continued recording from beside her vehicle. Brennan looked around the parking lot as though the witnesses themselves had suddenly become part of the problem. Darius noticed. They did not create what happened, he said quietly. They only saw it. Brennan turned toward him. I was responding to a suspicious person report. That explains why you approached me. Darius nodded toward his credential. It does not explain why you kept questioning the answers. A police command vehicle entered the lot several minutes later. Chief Andrew Collins stepped out with a department supervisor and walked directly toward the group. He listened first to Miller, then Morgan, then Karen. He did not ask Darius for a dramatic retelling. Instead, he looked at Brennan's body camera. Is that recording intact? Yes, Chief. Miller's? Yes. Collins looked toward Linda. Ma'am, are you recording? Yes. Please preserve the original file. I will. Collins turned to Brennan. When did Agent Mitchell give you his credentials? Near the beginning. Did Officer Miller offer to verify them? Brennan's jaw tightened. Yes. Did the building manager confirm the meeting? Eventually. Morgan spoke from behind the perimeter. I confirmed it before the field office call. Collins looked back at Brennan. Did you check the vehicle registration when Agent Mitchell offered that as another verification method? Not immediately. Collins paused. What information were you waiting for? Brennan looked toward Darius. No answer came. Darius broke the silence. Chief, do not ask when he learned I was Federal Bureau of Investigation. Collins turned toward him. What should I ask? Darius looked at the credential wallet on the hood. Ask when he first had enough information to check. Collins held Darius's gaze for a moment, then nodded. That is exactly what the review will determine. He turned back to Brennan. Officer Brennan, you are relieved from field duty effective immediately pending expedited administrative review. Badge and department identification. Brennan stared at him. Chief, because he is federal? Because the documented decisions require review. Collins held out his hand. Brennan slowly removed his badge and department identification. Then he looked at Darius. You wanted this? Darius's expression remained still. No, then what did you want? Darius picked up his credential wallet. I wanted you to verify me. The parking lot became quiet. Collins instructed the supervisor to preserve dispatch audio, body camera footage, vehicle checks, field office verification records, and all available witness video. Darius looked toward Miller. Your attempts to verify should be preserved too. Miller seemed surprised. You want that included? The record should show everything, not only what supports me. Collins nodded. It will. Karen handed Darius his sealed case folder. Ready? Darius looked toward space 214. The painted number sat beneath the rear bumper exactly where it had 8 minutes earlier. Almost. He turned to Collins. Chief, if the evidence supports discipline, follow it. If it supports something else, follow that. Collins listened. But do not end his career because I carry a federal badge. Brennan looked up. Darius continued, decide what his decisions deserve before you knew what my credentials meant. Collins gave a slow nod. Understood. Darius walked toward his sedan with Karen. Behind him, Brennan stood without his badge while cameras, timestamps, witnesses, and 47 seconds of verification remained exactly where memory could no longer reshape them. Darius opened the driver's door, then looked once across the ordinary public parking lot. He had not wanted power to reverse the humiliation. He had wanted evidence to prevent it. Now the evidence would have to decide what came next. The drive back to the field office took less than 20 minutes, but Darius Mitchell barely noticed the traffic. Karen Wallace sat beside him in the federal vehicle while his sealed case folder rested between them. For several blocks, neither spoke. The parking lot had disappeared behind downtown buildings, yet Darius could still picture space 214, the credential wallet on the patrol hood, the strangers watching, and the red light on Scott Brennan's body camera. Karen finally broke the silence. You could have let Chief Collins believe you wanted Brennan gone. Darius looked through the window. Why would I do that? Because most people would understand. Understanding anger does not make anger a standard. Karen studied him. You were publicly treated like your own identification was suspicious. Then the record should show that. And if the record supports termination? Then the department should reach that conclusion without borrowing my badge to get there. At the field office, Darius returned to the fraud investigation that had brought him to Westbridge Office Center. He placed the sealed folder on his desk and opened it beside the records David Morgan had provided. His credential wallet rested near his right hand. It looked ordinary again. Across town, Chief Collins began reconstructing the parking lot encounter minute by minute. Brennan's body camera showed the initial approach. Darius stepped away from the sedan immediately. Identification requested. Federal credential produced. Collins paused the recording. Timestamp. A department investigator marked it. The footage continued. Ethan Miller suggested verification. Brennan said not yet. Darius offered the field office. Then vehicle registration. Then David Morgan. Collins watched Morgan appear outside the building and confirm the scheduled meeting. Brennan continued questioning. Linda Parker's recording added another angle. From across the parking aisle, her phone captured office workers turning to look when Brennan loudly questioned whether the sedan actually belonged to Darius. Collins paused again. Did the registration match? Yes, Chief. When was it checked? After Miller began independent verification. Collins wrote it down. The body camera continued. Karen called repeatedly. Brennan dismissed the contact name as insufficient. Darius agreed and suggested calling the field office independently. Miller finally did. 47 seconds later, everything checked. Collins leaned back. Run it again. They did. This time he counted not minutes, but opportunities. Credential. Field office. Registration. Building manager. Supervisor calls. Each was a separate path toward the same answer. Later that afternoon, Collins called Darius. Agent Mitchell, the evidence has been preserved. Formal administrative review is open. Darius stood beside his desk. Including Officer Miller's recording? Yes. And his attempts to verify? Collins paused. Yes. Good. You want that emphasized? I want it documented accurately. Collins looked toward the notes in front of him. We are also reviewing whether Brennan's public questioning was reasonably related to the original call or continued after the basis for suspicion weakened. Darius became quiet. That matters. Because people were watching? Because authority changes the meaning of a public question. Collins waited. Darius continued, asking for identification can be procedure. Continuing to imply someone does not own his own car after registration and credentials can be checked is something else. The evidence should tell you where that line was crossed. Collins nodded. Understood. And Chief, investigate motive carefully. You mean racial bias? Darius looked at his credential wallet. I know I was a black man standing in a parking lot while evidence about who I was kept being discounted. I know what that felt like. But your findings have to say what you can prove, not what would make the cleanest story. Collins was silent for a moment. Fair enough. Darius ended the call and returned to the case records. 47 seconds had established his federal identity. The administrative review would take longer, because justice was supposed to. Outside his window, evening settled over the city. On his desk, the credential wallet sat beside the sealed folder, no more powerful than it had been in Brennan's hand. The difference now was that nobody was asking the badge to win an argument. They were asking the evidence to remember exactly how the argument had begun. By the next morning, Chief Andrew Collins had synchronized the body camera recordings, dispatch audio, Linda Parker's phone video, vehicle records, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation verification call into a single timeline. Without the tension of the parking lot, the sequence looked painfully simple. Darius Mitchell had been standing beside his own sedan in space 214. Officer Scott Brennan approached after a broad suspicious person report. Darius complied immediately. Brennan requested identification. Darius produced federal credentials. Officer Ethan Miller offered to verify them. Brennan delayed. Darius offered the field office number. Then the vehicle registration. Then David Morgan, who came outside and confirmed the scheduled federal meeting. Karen Wallace called repeatedly. Still, Brennan continued questioning Darius publicly as though each new answer created another reason for suspicion. Collins stopped the recording at the moment Brennan questioned whether the sedan actually belonged to Darius. Registration status at this point, he asked. The investigator beside him checked the timeline. Available for verification. Not yet checked. Collins resumed the footage. Darius asked what information Brennan was waiting for. No clear answer came. Miller finally called the field office. 47 seconds later, Darius was confirmed as an active special agent, his official assignment was confirmed, and the sedan registration matched. Collins turned off the monitor. Now check the prior complaints. 3 files required closer examination. One involved a black attorney questioned in an office garage despite presenting valid building credentials. Another involved a black physician stopped near a hospital employee lot during an overnight shift. The third involved a black technology consultant challenged outside a secured business complex despite having scheduled access. Collins wrote one sentence before reading further. Different people, different circumstances, separate findings. None automatically proved racial bias in Darius's case. But all three raised a similar question. When verification became available, did Brennan reassess his assumptions or continue defending them? Collins ordered each complaint reviewed independently. That afternoon, he called Darius. We have a preliminary timeline. Darius stood beside his field office window with the credential wallet resting near the fraud records on his desk. Preliminary means unfinished. Correct. Then tell me only what the evidence establishes. Collins looked at his notes. You complied with the initial instructions. You produced federal credentials when requested. Miller offered verification. Morgan confirmed your meeting. Your supervisor attempted contact. Vehicle ownership could be checked. Brennan delayed those verification steps while continuing the public questioning. Miller eventually called the field office, and confirmation took 47 seconds. Darius looked toward the credential wallet. And the public statements about my car? Under review as part of whether the questioning remained reasonably connected to the original report after contradictory information accumulated. Good. Collins paused. We also located prior complaints involving Brennan. Darius became still. Were they substantiated? Mixed outcomes. One resulted in counseling. Others closed without formal discipline. Then do not use what happened to me to rewrite them. There are similarities. Similarities justify investigation. They do not replace it. Collins nodded. Agreed. Darius turned toward the window. And Miller? Reviewed separately. His attempts to verify you are documented. Keep them that way. Collins was quiet for a moment. Agent Mitchell, do you believe Brennan treated you differently because you are black? Darius took several seconds before answering. I believe he saw a black man near parked cars, formed an assumption, and kept discounting information that challenged it. Collins waited. Whether that establishes racial bias is something your evidence has to answer. Do not make my anger your shortcut. Understood. Darius looked at the credential wallet again. And do not make my federal status the lesson. Meaning? If Brennan learns only that he publicly questioned the wrong powerful man, then nothing useful changes. Collins leaned back. Darius continued, the next person in that parking lot may be an accountant, a nurse, a delivery driver, or someone simply standing beside his own car. Evidence should matter before anyone discovers what title he carries. After the call, Collins reopened the footage and stopped at the earliest clear image of Brennan holding Darius's credential. Space 214 was visible behind them. The answer had been there almost from the beginning. The investigation now had to determine why one officer had spent so much longer defending an assumption than the system needed to verify the truth. 2 days later, the formal review moved from reconstruction to findings. Chief Andrew Collins sat with the investigative team while the synchronized recordings played across 3 monitors. Scott Brennan's body camera showed Darius Mitchell stepping away from the sedan when instructed. Ethan Miller's camera showed the federal credential wallet clearly enough to read the agency identification. Linda Parker's recording captured something the police cameras did not fully reveal: the faces of strangers turning toward Darius when Brennan publicly questioned whether the car beside him was really his. Collins watched that moment twice. Then he continued. Darius offered the field office. Miller offered to call. Brennan delayed. Darius offered vehicle registration. David Morgan confirmed the scheduled meeting. Karen Wallace called repeatedly. Every new piece of information weakened the original suspicion, but Brennan continued questioning as though changing his mind would mean surrendering authority. 47 seconds after Miller finally contacted the field office, everything checked. Collins closed the video window. The conduct findings are supportable. An investigator nodded. Delayed verification. Failure to reassess as contradictory information accumulated. Unnecessary continuation of public questioning after multiple verification paths became available. Collins looked toward the separate files involving the black attorney, physician, and technology consultant. And bias? Serious concern. The similarities justify broader review, but motive is harder to establish conclusively from these records alone. Collins nodded. Then write exactly that. No stronger. No weaker. Across town, Brennan sat with a department representative watching the same footage. The recording stopped on the moment Darius asked, "What information are you waiting for?" The representative looked at Brennan. "What were you waiting for?" Brennan stared at the screen. "I thought he was trying to control the encounter." "By offering verification?" Brennan said nothing. "Did he refuse to step away from the vehicle?" "No." "Did he refuse identification?" "No." "Did he interfere when Miller called?" "No." The representative resumed the recording. Morgan appeared. Karen called. Darius offered registration. Brennan continued questioning. Then Miller made the call. 47 seconds. The confirmation arrived. The representative paused again. "When did you first have enough information to verify him?" Brennan looked at the image of the credential wallet in his own hand. "At the beginning." The answer came quietly. That afternoon, Collins called Darius. The review supports formal findings related to delayed verification and failure to reassess the continued detention as new information accumulated. Darius stood in the field office beside a conference table covered with fraud investigation records. And the public questioning? The review found that parts of it continued after reasonable verification options were available and contributed unnecessarily to the encounter. Darius looked through the window. Racial bias? Collins paused. The broader review remains open. The prior complaints raise concerns, but I cannot tell you we have conclusively established motive. Then do not say you have. You understand that a stronger conclusion might help your complaint. Darius turned toward the credential wallet on the table. Accuracy matters more when exaggeration would help me. Collins was silent for a moment. Brennan remains off duty while the personnel process continues. That is your department's decision. You still will not recommend discipline? No, not even now? Darius picked up the credential wallet. Chief, I wanted him to verify this. I did not ask to become the person who decides what happens to his badge. Collins leaned back. What do you want then? Darius looked at the closed wallet in his hand. A standard that works when I am not standing there. Later that evening, Karen found him returning the fraud records to their case files. Collins told me the findings are moving forward. They should. And Brennan? Personnel review. Karen studied him. You really do not want the final word? Darius shook his head. The final word should belong to the evidence. He slipped the credential into his coat. If he loses his badge, it should be because his documented decisions justify it, not because mine carries 3 letters people recognize. Karen looked at him. And if he keeps it? Darius paused. Then the department should be able to explain why. Outside, evening settled over the city. Somewhere across town, Brennan was still facing the moment his own recording showed him holding the answer. Darius had needed 47 seconds of verification. Brennan would need much longer to understand why he had spent several minutes refusing to let those seconds begin. 2 weeks after the formal findings were drafted, Chief Andrew Collins received the completed administrative report. He read it alone before the personnel conference began. The report did not start with Darius Mitchell's federal title. It started with the first moment Officer Scott Brennan had enough information to test his assumption. Darius had complied with the initial instruction. He had produced federal credentials when requested. Officer Ethan Miller had offered to verify them. Darius had provided the field office as an independent source. Vehicle registration was available. David Morgan had confirmed the scheduled meeting. Karen Wallace had attempted contact repeatedly. Yet Brennan continued publicly questioning Darius even as each new fact weakened the original suspicion. When Miller finally made the verification call, 47 seconds resolved what several minutes of questioning had not. The department sustained findings involving delayed verification, failure to reassess the detention as contradictory information accumulated, and unnecessary continuation of public questioning after reasonable verification options became available. The earlier complaints remained under separate review. Their similarities raised serious concerns, but the department did not label them proof of racial motive without sufficient evidence. Miller's conduct was documented independently, including his repeated attempts to verify Darius and his eventual decision to make the call. Collins contacted Darius before the personnel conference. The findings are final. Darius stood beside his desk with the credential wallet near a new case folder. What was sustained? Collins summarized the findings. Darius listened without interrupting. And the broader bias review? Still open. We are not going beyond what the evidence establishes. Good. Collins paused. The department is also changing procedure for identity verification during investigative stops. When credentials, registration, employment, or another reliable source can be independently checked, officers will be expected to use available verification promptly unless a documented safety concern prevents it. Darius looked through the window. That matters. More than Brennan's outcome? Yes. Collins sounded surprised. Why? Darius touched the credential wallet. His outcome addresses one officer. Procedure may protect the next person. Later that afternoon, Brennan sat across from Collins with a department representative beside him. The administrative report rested on the table. Collins did not raise his voice. The personnel board reviewed the sustained findings, your disciplinary record, the body camera footage, the witness recording, dispatch records, and the verification timeline. Brennan stared at the first page. Did Mitchell ask you to fire me? No. Brennan looked up. Collins continued, he specifically refused to recommend what should happen to you. Why? Because he said his federal badge should not decide what your decisions deserve. Brennan lowered his eyes. Collins placed another document beside the report. The board determined that the sustained conduct, considered with the applicable disciplinary history, warrants termination under department policy. Brennan remained silent. There was no audience now. No parking lot. No strangers watching. Only the written record of choices that could no longer be explained away by the pressure of the moment. So this is it? Brennan asked. Collins nodded. Your employment is terminated effective today under the completed personnel process. Brennan looked toward the report. Because I stopped a federal agent. Collins shook his head. No. Because the record shows what you did while you were still refusing to verify whether he was one. Across town, Darius knew none of this yet. He was preparing documents for another meeting at Westbridge Office Center. Karen entered his office with a message from Collins. The personnel process is finished. Darius looked up. Outcome? Termination. He was quiet for several seconds. Karen watched him. Nothing? Darius closed the case folder. There is nothing to celebrate. You wanted accountability. Yes. He slipped the credential wallet into his coat. Accountability is not celebration. Karen nodded toward the folder. Going back to Westbridge? Tomorrow. Darius picked up his coat. Same building? Same parking lot. Karen almost smiled. Space 214? Darius looked at her. If nobody took it. The next afternoon would place him exactly where the story had begun. But this time, Darius was less interested in whether anyone recognized his federal credentials than in whether someone without a federal badge could stand beside an ordinary car and have ordinary evidence treated like it mattered. The next afternoon, Darius Mitchell turned into the Westbridge Office Center parking lot and saw Space 214 open beneath the same row of bare trees. He guided his silver sedan into the painted lines, switched off the engine, and remained still for a moment. 3 weeks earlier, the number beneath his rear bumper had marked the place where strangers watched an officer question whether the car beside him was really his. Today it was only a parking space. Darius stepped out wearing the same charcoal suit beneath a dark overcoat, a new sealed case folder tucked beneath his arm. His federal credential wallet remained inside his coat. He locked the sedan and started toward the building. Halfway across the lot, he noticed a young black man standing beside a dark blue sedan several spaces away. The man wore a gray business coat and carried a laptop bag. A parking security employee stood near him holding a permit card. Darius slowed without stopping. "The permit number is not showing on my handheld," the security employee said. The young man nodded. "My company renewed it Monday. My identification should match the account. May I see it?" "Of course." He handed over his identification. The security employee checked the name, called the office desk, and waited. Less than half a minute later, the handheld refreshed. "There it is. You are good to go, sir." The young man accepted his identification. "Thank you. Sorry about the delay." "No problem." That was all. No raised voices. No public accusation about whose car it was. No police vehicle turning into the lot. No crowd gathering. No supervisor arriving to make ordinary evidence important. Darius stood near the walkway for one quiet second. The young man noticed him and gave the small polite nod strangers sometimes exchanged in parking lots. Darius returned it and continued toward the building. David Morgan met him inside the lobby. "Agent Mitchell. Welcome back." Darius looked through the glass toward Space 214. "Good to be back." Morgan followed his gaze. "I heard the department finished its personnel process." "They did." "Brennan?" "Terminated." Morgan waited for something more. Darius gave him nothing. "Does that feel like justice?" Morgan finally asked. Darius looked toward the security desk where the young man from the parking lot was entering the building. "That depends on what happens after the consequence." Morgan frowned slightly. "Meaning?" "One officer losing a badge tells you what the department decided about yesterday." Darius nodded toward the parking lot. "What I just saw tells me something may be different tomorrow." They entered the elevator. On the 4th floor, Karen Wallace was already waiting in the conference room with several new financial records spread across the table. "You got 214 again?" she asked. Darius placed the sealed case folder beside the documents. "Apparently the universe has a sense of humor." Karen smiled. "Anything happened downstairs?" Darius removed his credential wallet and set it beside the folder. "Nothing." "Nothing?" He looked at her. "Exactly." Through the conference room windows, the parking lot stretched below them in neat rows of ordinary vehicles. People arrived. People left. A delivery driver showed authorization at the service entrance and continued inside. An employee discovered she had parked in the wrong section, spoke with security, checked her permit, and moved her car. Nobody gathered to watch. Nobody needed a police chief. Nobody needed a federal supervisor. Darius opened the case folder. His credential wallet remained beside it, no longer a symbol of authority or vindication. It was simply identification again. That was what he had wanted from the beginning. Not a moment where everyone discovered he was powerful. A world where evidence did not need power standing behind it. Karen turned to the first financial record. Darius followed. Outside, a gust of wind moved dry leaves across space 214, briefly covering the painted numbers before carrying them away. The parking lot stayed quiet. Darius never looked down again. There was nothing left there that needed proving.